This year's playoffs have been wild. Teams have been dominating at an unprecedented rate on home ice.
5 to go, Fowler lines up, firing and scoring is Parayko.
We literally had a fight break out, which ended up on a bench. Come on.
Okay.
And the linesman is still right there.
Drama and emotion at an all-time high. And do you know what one of the worst things you can do to a prideful team on home ice? Acting overconfident, arrogant, if not straight up cocky.
Wow.
Especially when you act cocky towards one of the most prideful teams and fan bases in the entire NHL. As Tom Wilson would learn this the hard way. When Tom Wilson did this, it was the turning point of the game.
Hands it off, Caulfield,
As Montreal would soon after unleash an onslaught of offense that would bring this team back in the series. Not only that, the Capitals star goalie Logan Thompson would be injured soon after by his own player.
Just on the puck right there. It's almost like he cross-checked him right on the throat area.
Which makes you think, is this cockiness leading to instant karma? No, probably not. But we've seen cockiness time and time again fuel the opposition into making a comeback. Because what makes playoff hockey so special, so unique, is the parity. With other sports like the NBA, it is rare to see true underdog runs. Teams who just managed to make the playoff cut, only to go on a deep playoff run. In the NHL, it's fairly common. Montreal nearly missed the playoffs and would make it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. The Panthers were the last team to make the playoffs, yet they too would make it to the Stanley Cup final. The St. Louis Blues started the season as a bottom team, where they would ultimately win the Stanley Cup. That's 3 teams in the last 6 years who made it to the final if not won a cup, who nearly missed the playoffs. This level of competition doesn't exist in any other sport. So when you combine the highest level of competition in the NHL and the ability to use that emotion to feel physicality and fighting, you end up with what is hands down the best playoff experience from any North American sport, for what is easily the hardest trophy to win in North American sports. Yet, this year, something's different, and after digging into the reason, I would discover something shocking. And today's video is sponsored by SeatGeek. After one of the most historic seasons of the last decade, Ovechkin breaking Gretzky's goal-scoring record, Crosby setting a record for the most point-per-game seasons in NHL history, 4 nations face off putting the NHL on the front page of the sports world, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in playoffs. So there is no better time to pick up some tickets with SeatGeek, where I can find lower bowl tickets to an Oilers-Kings playoff matchup for $183. Some of the best hockey you will ever witness. Invaluable experiences for $183. Even if you've used SeatGeek in the past, if you download the app today or click the link down below using code RobTalksHockey10, you'll receive 10% off any tickets, whether it's the NHL, NBA, MLB, concerts. So thank you so much to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video. As I'm making this video, NHL teams are going 13-3 on home ice. Think about the optics here. The home team in the playoffs has a 55% win rate in the playoffs, and this season we're sitting at 81%. As typically when a team is down 2-0 in a series, there's only about a 20% chance that they come back and push it to Game 7, but this year has been a massive outlier. However, yes, teams have been dominating on home ice, but when they go on the road, the narrative is flipped. So it then begs the question, what in the hell is happening? Last season, we would see yet another LA Oilers matchup. Except, LA had a big problem. Special teams. More so the inability to score on the power play. On this play, I want you to specifically look at Victor Arvidsson, as his role was to be the net front guy. Because it was clear that the LA Kings game plan was to relentlessly get shots on net in hopes of a juicy rebound.
Lines it across, one-timer, and it's Stuart Skinner.
As Arvidsson shifts to the front of the net, where Stewart makes an easy save. On this next play, similar to the previous one, we would see LA set up on the power play, where they plant 2 big bodies in front of the net, again in hopes of creating a screen for a rebound, or perhaps a deflection.
Spence shooting into trap.
But ultimately, they wouldn't score a single goal in the power play this series. This fact would lead them to being eliminated from the playoffs. However, this year, they would realize their issue. So what did they do? They would acquire Andrei Kuzmenko at the trade deadline. Why, you ask? Kuzmenko has created a brand new dynamic, which has single-handedly led to them going up in the series. On this play from Game 1, we see the LA Kings setting up on the power play, but instead of simply parking 2 guys net front in hopes of screening the goalie for a deflection or rebound, Kuzmenko is instead parked backdoor with the stick on the ice. This now opens up an entirely new strategy. Cycle the puck until a player has a clear shot lane, or B, let Kuzmenko get lost in the mix, where he is now wide open backdoor. This sole fact would lead to the Oilers now having to change their entire defensive structure. On this play, we again see Kuzmenko parked net front, but unlike last time, we now have a defenseman committed to taking him out of the play. Look at the impact of Kuzmenko. Before, they just had two guys parked net front, but because of the gravity of Kuzmenko's puck skills in close, he's now able to force two defenders in tight, which opens up so many options. Keep cycling the puck for a shot. Brandt Clarke is now left wide open, or because of the attention drawn by Kuzmenko and Clarke net front, pass it to Kopitar, who is now left wide open.
Doesn't take it back door.
This is also an extremely difficult shot. A one-timer from a guy who's left-handed on the left side is just ridiculous. And what's so ironic about this is the fact that Edmonton constantly utilized this exact same strategy with Zach Hyman last season.
As here's McDavid with a pass in front, they score!
As the LA Kings being able to adapt and use past experience to their advantage single-handedly upset the Oilers in games 1 and 2. But remember, home ice is another story, especially this year, because in game 4, we would see overconfidence single-handedly lead to this series going in Edmonton's favor, as you can't outscore this team in a 7-game series. Hell no, game 4 was a must-win for the Kings. However, down 1 goal in the dying moments of the third period, the Oilers would pull their goalie, where Quinton Byfield would gain separation with the puck. Instead of getting the puck into the zone, Byfield instead tries to skate it out. We would then see a great defensive move, and ultimately wins in overtime. This one play changed the entire outcome of this series. If Byfield instead does a soft dump, it gives the Kings a chance to reset up their defensive scheme, where they most likely win the game because Edmonton runs out of time. As this right here is what makes playoff hockey so intense. In the regular season, we see a lot of loose systems. The NFL is so fascinating because they have a week to create entire game plans to shut down one team. In the NHL, it isn't possible, except in the playoffs, where matchups become closer to chess rather than chaos with a sprinkle of strict systems. With that being said, what even is a strict system? Or perhaps what isn't a strict system? Players trying to make a fancy pass up the ice,
Center right pass, turned over, Maroon, score!
only for it to lead to a massive turnover, leading to a goal. Players trying to be fancy when entering the offensive zone, leading to a turnover.
Quickly moved up to Anderson. Anderson up the middle and scores!
Byfield trying to carry the puck up the ice instead of dumping it out of his zone. Because when you think what it takes for a team or your team to win a cup in today's NHL, many of you will say defense, goaltending, offense, and depth, and you're definitely not wrong. But none of this means anything if you're not able to adapt in the moment. Edmonton adapting to the power play setup around Kuzmenko put them back in the series. It's the same reason to why so many players are obsessed with iPads. On one hand, analyzing every play after you get off the ice can ultimately be a negative thing, as it can make players overthink plays in the moment. But on the other hand, it can allow players to analyze what they did right and wrong in the moment. So the very next shift, they know what to do. Think about when you die in a video game and there's a replay. Yeah, you can skip it, sure, but you can also pay attention to why they're gaining the advantage and then use that knowledge to your advantage. So I'll ask you this, is your team adapting and changing systems on the fly, or perhaps sticking to their systems? Because if not, they may be in trouble. I'd really appreciate a like on this video, a big shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.